Anduin versus Scarlet!
The unholy fester.
I will protect the Alliance.
Talk, little Death Knight. Talk, little Death Knight.
What? Oh, boy!
Starting the operation.
Job done. Job done.
Eyes on the horizon!
Can't this thing dance any faster?
I wonder.
The citadel stands strong!
I can't dance any faster!
The citadel stands strong!
Job's done.
What? All boys!
This isn't real metal! Nightmares are never forgotten.
Job's done.
Oh, overeager. Talk, little Death Knight.
Can't this thing dance any faster?
This is not what we stood for.
Job's done.
Eyes on the horizon! I can't dance any faster!
The citadel stands strong! Go forth on swift wings.
All are nourished when the cycle renews.
Find me in the dream.
Let's give you some extra time.
You have better.
Anduin versus Tyrande.
The moon give me strength.
I will protect the Alliance.
Job's done.
What pretty petals! Petal perfection! Find me in the dream. Petal perfection! Find me in the dream. Many from petal perfection!
Job's done.
What pretty petals! Many from one. What pretty petals!
Starting the operation.
Many from one. Petal perfection. A recurring dream. A recurring dream. A recurring dream.
Starting the operation. Go forth on swift wings.
All are nourished when the cycle renews.
Anduin versus Tyrande.
The moon give me strength.
I will protect the Alliance.
What pretty petals! Find me in the dream. Petal perfection. Find me in the dream.
Starting the operation.
Many from Petal perfection. Find me in the dream. Many from one.
Molded in my rage is not valued by size.
Many from one.
Job's done.
Quickly.
Nightmares are never forgotten.
I wonder. I must consider. Quickly.
Go forth on swift wings.
Need help? Let's give you some extra time.
You have better.
Anduin versus Jaina.
You asked for it.
I will protect the Alliance.
Safety violations, nothing serious.
You making a big mistake,
A master tactician. This is nothing.
I wonder.
is too full. My hand is too full.
Job's done.
Find me in the dream.
Job's done.
Starting the operation.
Thank you.
Anduin versus Sail!
You'd better make this good.
I will protect the Alliance.
Job's done.
Starting the operation. Find me in the dream. Patch you up. I grow weary. Many from one. Patch you up. Many from one.
Job's done.
That minion already attacked.
This is not what we stood for!
Many from one.
Eyes on the horizon!
Go forth on swift wings.
All are nourished when the cycle renews.
What pretty petal!
Need help? Let's give you some extra time.
Petal perfection! Find me in the dream. Fight for the wilds!
Anduin versus Medivh!
Let the games begin. I will protect the Alliance.
Spirit, lend me your power. Starting the operation.
Job's done.
Follow the flutterwings!
Find me in the dream.
I must consider.
Must move quickly.
What pretty petals!
Job's done.
Follow the flutterwings!
Annihilation commencing.
Job done.
A recurring dream. What pretty petals!
Job's done.
Stand with me.
Petal perfection!
Our path is clear. I must be decisive.
I must consider.
Our path is clear.
Annihilation commencing. Find me in the dream. recurring dream.
Anduin versus Kerrigan.
Nothing stands in my way.
I will protect the Alliance.
Job's done.
What pretty petals!
The citadel stands strong!
What pretty petals! Petal perfection!
You could use a trim.
Petal perfection!
What all boys?
Find me in the dream. Petal perfection!
Can't this thing dance any faster?
Many from one. Petal perfection!
This is not what we stood for.
Job's done.
Too many colors.
I can't dance any faster. My dreadlings crave blood.
The citadel stands strong!
Rotten to the core!
Many from one.
Eyes on the horizon!
What's called, boys?
You look tasty.
I must consider.
Many from one.
Quickly!
Kill quickly.
Anduin versus Tyrande.
You give me strength.
I will protect the Alliance.
That's the worst.
That's the worst.
That sucks. Hello there. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ian Mason. We have quite a bit. And nowadays I'm on Raw, YouTube videos. And one of my big fascinations within climbing is just to learn how a lot of us train. And over the years I also had the privilege to meet a lot of professional climbers and top-level athletes. And they all kind of have this one thing in common, and that is that they basically don't have anything in common, which is kind of fascinating. It's one of the few sports where I think the top level is a little bit all over the place. The sport is a little bit all over the place. There's no distinct way to climb. You can be dynamic, you can be static, you can be tall, you
What
can be
pretty
short.
petals!
And it's a beautiful thing, but it also makes it quite interesting to hear just how each unique individual goes about their own training. And one of those unique individuals is the man of the hour, Alex Arnold, who I had the privilege of climbing with the other day. Some of you may already have seen the video we did on the Plumber's Crack, where we had a speed record event with the Storer guys, a group of parkour in the UK. That was a ton of fun. And after that session, I got to join Alex for a little gym session. That was a little bit of a cheap start, but to hear about
Starting
his
the
approach
operation.
to training, how he looks at it, and what he does to remain in shape for adventures. So that's the point of this video. I'm trying to explain how Alex Arnold trains for rock climbing. But before we can jump into that, I want to announce today's sponsor, and that is Nature Climbing. I mean, this block right here is probably the most gorgeous piece of wood that I have ever laid my eyes on. It's 20mm granite It's got
Job's done.
and I use these for my no-hang protocol that I try to do every single day, just kind of gently act.
Nightmares never forgotten.
Job's done.
I grow weary.
Job's done.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Optispan podcast. I'm super excited to be here today in Edmond, Oklahoma, with Dr. Kevin White, multiple-time guest on the podcast. And today we're going to go through my results of the quarterly exam that Kevin and I both took when we were down in Palm Beach a few weeks ago. So clearly, as I understand it, the AI algorithm that sits on top of a CCTA or coronary computed tomography angiography.
Find me in the dream.
What the clearly really does is the analysis piece of this. Right? Yeah.
Job's done.
Really diversified calcified and soft plaque and low density soft plaque, really. So it's a new way to kind of view disease.
proactively.
And so the idea is that a calcium scan will show you the hard plaque, and then with
Find
the
me in the dream.
with contrast, which is what we did, that allows you to. And then, as we'll see as we sort of dive into the clearly reports, and it's too full to visualize in specific regions what the plaque burden is, and detect these much earlier. You use this now with a handful of your patients, and what are your sort of kind of take homes on the utility of the method?
Oh yeah, I think it's extremely valuable because, you know, with everything else, you think about the other things that are the big killers. I mean, we look at mammograms, we follow prostate, we follow, you know, we do colonoscopy.
What pretty petals!
Cardiovascular disease. We've had people in the emergency room come in with heart attacks that may have had a normal stress test, you know, 3-4 months prior. So this is a way to really visualize it in
A recurring dream.
So with us, it's
A recurring
very
dream.
helpful in looking at the disease and seeing where we need to go from there. If this is, you know, something we need to double down on or not. We can't have a conversation about longevity without discussing cardiovascular disease, right?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, you were telling me earlier today about an example of a guy you know who was in really good shape, really fit. You'd look at the guy and think he's super healthy, but his blood lipids were kind of through the roof, right, in terms of risk. And he really didn't want to go on a statin, right? And unfortunately, he had a heart attack.
Yeah.
In his 40s, right?
Correct.
And I think that's a perfect use case for something like this, where, you know, if there's somebody whose biomarkers suggest that there may be early risk, you know, is maybe resistant to the idea of medication or really leaning in on lifestyle factors, you get see the plaque burden, show them, you know, the blockage. I think that's a really big shift mindset.
Petal perfection!
But I think knowledge is power in a case like that, and so in any case, I was interested in trying this out. We're thinking of implementing this as part of one of our programs. Both down in Palm Beach.
My hand is full.
The Live Long Experience Conference.
Go forth on swift wings!
All are nourished and the cycle renewed.
First time ever doing a coronary angiogram.
Need help.
From
Let's give him some extra time.
my doctor,
You have best.
didn't tell me beforehand that I shouldn't drink coffee and I shouldn't exercise. Heart rate is supposed to be, I don't know,
60 technically.
60 or lower. So of course I had plenty of coffee and anyways, got there, and so they had to give me a beta blocker to kind of bring my heart rate down low enough for the exam. Not a big deal, worked like a charm. And then they, you know, lay you down in the machine. It sort of feels like an MRI experience from that perspective. I mean, from my perspective, it felt similar in the way the process went.
Right.
Except they had an IV in for the contrast.
Yeah.
And fortunately, she warned me beforehand that when she
Anduin
gave me the IV,
versus the
I
Lich
might
King!
experience sort of a warm sensation in my face, neck,
On
my
cold
groin,
wind.
which I did.
I will
which was
protect the
interesting,
Alliance.
but not bad. Just it would have surprised me. It would have really surprised me if I hadn't expected that to come. But yeah, short-lived, not a big deal. Really easy. I found the whole experience really easy. So you know, I think that was very positive experience there. I know some people are going to be worried about the radiation because this is a CT. Do you have any thoughts on the amount of exposure and whether that's something that people really need to be concerned about?
Right. So in millisievert, it's only about 1.4. Back, you know, years ago, it used to be the newer machines. It's very negligible. You get, I think it's a few millisieverts just by living on planet Earth every year. It's really pretty negligible for the amount of information you get. It's not
Not a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, Peter Attia just had a recent episode
Yeah, that was
about
good.
radiation. I thought it was good, and I think the take home from that is that we have been sort of culturally very fearful about any amount of radiation, and maybe that's overblown a little bit. So I recommend people check that episode out. Obviously, make your own decisions and consultation with your doctor about what level of radiation exposure is too much of a risk. But I tend to align with you where I think the value of something like this outweighs the risk for many people from the little bit of radiation that you're going to be exposed to. And then the other thing that you told me that I wasn't aware of is that you have this sort of kidney problem. The contrast itself. So let's dive in and look at my results. And I will say, going in, I was nervous. I didn't really. Yeah, I kind of thought that I would have plaque. And part of that is because of a family history of heart disease in father, and also the fact that for much of my adolescence and adult life, I lived a let's just say suboptimal lifestyle. Sure. So I figured there would probably be some significant plaque burden.
Yeah, too. Yeah.
But let's dive in and see what we found. So I'm going to do a quick report. The thing I have to say that annoys me a little bit is you have to be a provider. But it seems to me that patients should be able to get access to all of these.
Job's
They
done.
send you like a PDF report, but it doesn't give you the functionality of actually being able to get into the details, kind of see the visualizations the way you can on the provider portal. So if
hopefully you'll be going
Eyes on the horizon!
provider, but and it does give you
Sure. Yeah, it'll tell you like the plaque burden and things like that. But I feel like, and I think people will see how they start to do it, there's actually a lot of data here. I get why maybe the typical client, patient might not get a lot of value from that, but then there are a lot
This
of
is
people,
not what we stood for.
So I just wish Clearly would make this available to the patients. So if any of the Clearly folks are out there listening, that's a little bit of feedback. But anyway, we'll look at the reports here from the physician perspective. So folks at home, just recognize you won't be able to actually do this if you go get the Clearly, and then we'll also show the PDF report that goes to the client. Yeah.
Over on the left, you see you've got 16.1 cubic millimeters, right? And that's your entire plaque load. And where the diversifies that below that. And let me preface this with saying that I am. But we do know how to read numbers and kind of look at factors and everything. So, and I do know cardiologists that use this specific data here. But cubic millimeters, and then below there, 1.1
Job's
cubic
done.
millimeters. Now that's your total calcified plaque.
And that's what would come out on a calcium
Correct.
scan, right?
Yeah. And then over the right.
You look tasty.
Find me in the dream. What pretty petals!
Job's done.
Need help? Let's give you some extra time.
dream.
Job done.
A recurring dream. What pretty petals!
Job done.
It's my first ever interview with an enemy combatant, a commander from Russia's infamous Wagner group. We have a language barrier with this one, so bear with us. Interesting information. Language barrier.
What little time.
Wagner group. Gabadulin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
John, thank you for being here. Wanted to bring you on here to fill in a couple of gaps with the language barrier.
Sure.
Murat Gabadulin, born in Ural, you grew up in Uzbekistan and joined the Soviet military in 1984. Served as a paratrooper officer and commanded a recon company. Then joined Russia's Wagner group, starting as a grunt, fighting ISIS in Syria and rising all the way to commander. You worked closely with Wagner boss Prigozhin, advising the ISIS hunters in Syria and fought in the battle of 2018. You then quit Wagner and offered a book about your time with Wagner. Then you have moved to France, where you are now seeking asylum. This interview is taking place in Paris. Obviously, we couldn't get you to the U.S., so we came here to meet you. It's really weird for me to say this, but you are...
Find me in the dream. One from many!
Fought in a skirmish in Syria against 40 U.S. soldiers, Special Forces soldiers, and I'm friends with a couple of those guys and heard their account of that battle, and then we ran into your friend John Lechner and asked to be connected with you, so I just want to thank John. A freelance journalist, writer, and researcher who's been in conflict zones across the globe, author of the book Death. So thank you. History
really began in 2014, and Murat, he was saying, I think politics only on the inside calling the Wagner group itself as an entity never existed. It was sort of just a nickname.
I have one little time.
Russia, during Humility, some kind of obstruction, dual high against my life from the very beginning.
Wagner initially came out of the war in eastern Ukraine, and it's founded by Yevgeny Prigozhin, who Murat has mentioned. This is a guy who was born in the 60s and the Soviet Union, sort of grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. He was a petty thief and kind of a small-time gangster in his teenage years, and he goes away to prison at the age of 18, if I remember correctly, for
Eyes on the horizon!
He and his gang were on the streets in Leningrad and St. Petersburg, and strangled her until she almost died, and then was caught and sent to prison. And when he gets out, the Soviet Union returns to St. Petersburg, where first he falls in with some gangsters again in the 90s, which and things, and so he falls in with some crime bosses himself, and they set him up as a manager of some grocery stores. That a younger Vladimir Putin enjoyed, and he leveraged those relationships to eventually getting the job of providing meals to the whole Russian military.
We do what the living cannot.
Well, as you'll see, kind of as we go through the story,
Here I come, ready or not.
he manages to connect with but he's never able. He would always say that he was about one handshake away. And so Putin gets to know him. He kind of likes him because he's uncouth. He kind of has that rough kind of attitude, which is somewhat refreshing given kind of the bureaucratic elite that are surrounding Putin. And so Prigozhin eventually gets this job to provide the meals for the Russian military. And so that takes us to around 2014 or so, when
I wonder.
Well, let's go back a little bit further. So, while he's doing this work as a contractor, he also is looking for different ways that he can look good and get on Putin's radar. One of the ways he does it is there are massive protests against Putin's return to the presidency in 2012. And so Prigozhin puts together this kind of documentary that shows how all the protesters are fake, basically supported by the West. And, he finances this himself. It's not Putin is doing this, but it's a way to virtue signal and show, hey, I'm furthering the cause of, Putin's cause and Russia's cause more broadly. And so, as I said, Putin is coming to the presidency again in 2012. There are massive destabilizing protests against it. And he navigates it and gets back into power, but fairly quickly.
A recurring dream. A recurring dream.
Cards. Things as connected, right? It's the West basically trying to overthrow Russia. And so the Kremlin in early 2014 makes a decision to annex Crimea Peninsula. During this but the only warm water port that they have, and it's important. And so amidst all of this chaos, the Kremlin decides to annex Crimea. They use special forces to do it, but then they also rely on these kind of like right-wing Russian nationalist, chauvinists, kind of the folks in sort of Russia's own nationalist militant movement to provide some of the security on the peninsula for the annexation. And after its success, the Kremlin thinks everything's done and dusted. But kind of unbeknownst to them at the time, or kind of something that was unexpected, was that amidst this revolution in Ukraine, there was also an anti-Maidan movement, especially in eastern Ukraine, in this region called Donbass, which is economically and culturally closer to Russia. And so as Ukrainians are taking over government buildings to overthrow the government of Yanukovych, anti-Maidan protesters are taking over
Anduin versus Valera.
Donetsk and in Luhansk.
Watch your
And this puts
I will
Putin and
protect the
Kremlin into a
alliance.
difficult situation. Because unlike Crimea, they didn't want to annex eastern Ukraine, Donbass. It's not that important to Russia. But Putin is kind of boosting his nationalist credentials by annexing Crimea with a big and crucially, this is a rally around the flag from people who, these nationalists, these Russian nationalists and militant guys who were
Rod number 802, welcome to the collection.
Were marching against him. And so he can't be seen as letting these separatists in eastern Ukraine hang out to dry. But he doesn't want to risk further sanctions from the West, international isolation. And so the Kremlin has to think very quickly, like, how do we support but not support these separatists in eastern Ukraine? And this is where Yevgeny Prigozhin, the guy who's providing the meals for the Russian military,
Arise, twin shadows.
becomes acquainted with another guy, Dmitry Utkin, who is a former Russian military intelligence. He fought in Chechnya. He was stationed near Estonia, and he had just come back and almost got in big trouble for this kind of misadventure with a Russian PMC in Syria. These two guys come together and they sign an agreement whereby Utkin will provide the tactical knowledge, provide the men.
Find me in the grave.
The political backing and the financial support for this mercenary group that is very closely, if not basically, as Murat was saying, a Ministry of Defense that goes into eastern Ukraine right across the border to support the sector.
When I interviewed Eric Prince, we had spoken about Eric Prince earlier. They reached out to Eric Prince to Did you know that?
To tell the truth, I am not completely agree with this opinion. Firstly, Wagner Group has nothing to do with the private sector.
So what was the recruitment? How do they recruit their fighters?
So as Murat was saying, I mean, it's word of mouth, basically. And I think Murat will tell you later as well, the initial group of Wagner, which came out of this PMC that had the year before gone to Syria. So before Wagner, there were a number of kind of what we would think of as like Western style PMCs that had popped up. And the piracy crisis, which I'm sure you remember, there was an opportunity for these Russian contractors to protect Russian ships that are going through difficult situations. A number of Russian contractors were working on war on terrorism. The issue is that mercenarism is illegal in Russia, technically. And so these firms would basically establish themselves of the Bahamas or something along those lines. Provide them with the weapons when they showed up going through a third country to protect the ship or what have you. And there was this one group called Moran Group where Dmitry Utkin, after he left the service, went to go work for. And one of the founders got a contract with a Syrian oligarch in 2013 to at least what the guys thought at the time.
You have
too,
better.
was having, oil and gas assets from ISIS. It turned out that the Syrians wanted to actually take those assets from ISIS. And there was almost like a little mutiny among the contractors, but they went ahead and they got ambushed. And Dmitry Utkin actually got the guys out safely during a sandstorm. They all go back to Russia and with their tail between the legs. In the FSB, the successor to the KGB, arrests and charges the two commanders who went to Syria with
I will set the sky ablaze. I will
gets off
protect
along
the
with all the rest of
alliance.
the guys. And only a couple of months later, all of a sudden, Russia needs mercenaries. They know who, is interested in this type of work because they almost arrested the guy in Syria. And so those same 50 guys or so formed the core of what was just then called the company. And Dmitry Utkin, who is the son of the German composer Richard Wagner,
Job's done.
takes his call sign Wagner in Donbass. And since he was the main commander, eventually it becomes kind of the catch-all term for the company more generally.
Okay. So it sounds like when Marat came in, it was about 600 people.
So when Marat first came in April 2015, I think it was getting close to about 600 guys. He can correct me if I'm wrong. And Marat was coming in April 2015. So this is right around the time that Russia is actually trying to sort of get to a ceasefire and take over these separatist republics at the time. And so when Marat joined, Wagner was a bit different at the time. It was one of many different forces that the NRD was using to support the separatists, and no one thought that it was going to become what it became. And so it was one of several units figuring out
What pretty petals!
Job's done.
And Wagner had this group of 50 guys or so who had been in Syria, but they also had a unit of Serbian volunteers that were coming through. And so when Marat joined, he was initially part of the International Brigade, which was largely Serbian, and he had a Serbian commander. Eventually the Serbs would be kind of kicked by the wayside later on. When Marat joined, it was a few months before some of the final big battles, before we saw what was called the Minsk II ceasefire between Ukraine and the United States, backed by Russia at the time.
Okay.
What pretty petals! Petal perfection!
Situation
With a crime boss.
with a crime boss. And
What was this?
criminal using any opportunity to and this situation emerged on the empty place. But as a result, during the meeting, I shoot him.
You shot him.
Shot him, and I was sentenced to 3 years in prison.
Where did you shoot him? Where?
In the body.
In the body.
And then in the head. I was in prison in Krasnoyarsk, in Siberia. At the time, I served in Siberia. from the Kishinev to Siberia.
Find me in the
So they, I think Wagner at the beginning, and I think this what Marat will tell you was, for the most part, guys who had military experience like Marat, guys who had trouble adjusting to civilian life in some shape or form and wanted to experience the adventure and camaraderie again, and largely through word of mouth were recruited to the company when they found out there was this opportunity in Ukraine or eventually later on in Syria and elsewhere. And so for the most part, it was guys coming out of the military. Maybe they had a brush with the law, like Marat had, to put it lightly. But the full convict recruitment program, where if you saw the video,
time grows short.
Casino colonies and recruiting prisoners, that only happened after 2022 for Russia's full-scale invasion.
Okay.
So there were definitely dudes who had served prison time, got out, and then joined. If I remember correctly, Marat had a buddy from his military who by word of mouth, he said, "Hey, I'm doing this. Do you want to join?"
Okay. What was the test like? You said you had to take some type of a test to get into Wagner Group.
Time. And
55
push-ups, a 3-kilometer run. Were there any tactics involved, like room clearance, entering a building?
Oh no,
nothing like that.
No.
What do these guys get?
Depended, but they usually were getting about $2,000 a month during their time on the contract. And so this is pretty good money in Russia for guys. So it definitely motivates.
What have you developed in? I mean, they're in Africa.
Yeah.
They're in Ukraine. Are they doing breweries? They're doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
What all are they involved in?
So, story, because Marat was very much a state-supported entity. And you know, we can ask Marat as well. Again, I also don't think it could have become what it was if it weren't for the ambition of its founder, Yevgeny Prigozhin, as well. And so, kind of, if we look at what was happening in Ukraine in 2015, a lot of those units that the MOD was supporting after the ceasefire, they just kind of, you know, dispersed, went home, didn't really do much after. But only a few months later, Russia's over in Syria. There's nothing covert about it, right? It's a full, you know, air campaign with the Russian military. And Prigozhin to make sure that he gets now this kind of force at his disposal, and what he's good at is trying to figure out, okay, I have this, now what do I do with it? And it was at this point where I think he saw the black waters of the world, and he said, okay, I want to do kind of my version of this, and it so happened that Syria was going to be the next opportunity for him to do so. And so Marat was one of the first guys on the ground in Syria. As he'll tell you, the MOD didn't really know what to do with him, and a couple of guys got killed, and they didn't want casualties right away, so they panicked and sent them home. And it was only until it became clear that Russian air power alone wasn't going to defeat the rebels that Wagner was brought back in.
Time grows short.
On the ground where they take Palmyra then they get sent home again, and then they get back in, and we'll tell you all about the Battle of Kashan. But it gets to that point where it's this mix, right? They have safe backing, but Prigozhin is also out there with his guys basically doing business development. If you have a PMC, where are you going to market your services? You have to go to Africa. Otherwise you can fire your B&D guy. And so already in 2017, Prigozhin is sending his guys out to drum up new business. They first signed a contract with the Sudanese to provide training, and they get access to mining concessions in Sudan. Then they show up in the Central African Republic, where there's really no other kind of competition from other Russians, and so Prigozhin is able to provide training. He offers his like information warfare, because he has the troll funds, which were kind of very famous in the U.S. during the 2016 election. And his guys go out and they try to start breweries and gold mining, and they act very places aren't that important to Russia, and so he has to figure out his own ways to finance these operations. And so they go from the Central African Republic, they're in Libya, back in Kafkar in his bid to take Tripoli in 2019. Then they show up in Mali, where they sign a deal with the Malian government to go after various jihadi groups. And then ultimately, they are initially left out of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Cenarius, guide me to victory.
I
will protect the alliance.
When the Russian government's in trouble.
So these guys are not, they're definitely not just in Russia's best interest. They're doing their own thing in all these separate parts of the world.
Yeah, but I think that it's not. Because people are always asked, is this a private thing or a public thing? And the answer is both. And I mean, we're in Paris right now, but when I'm sitting in Washington, D.C., I try to explain to people, like, this is the capital of public-private partnerships, right? Lockheed Martin is a profit-driven company. They will frame whatever they're doing as serving national security, but they're also profit-driven. And so what Prigozhin was very good at was selling back to the Kremlin this dream of kind of Russia's expansion. To sell it back to Putin, these different initiatives that were also just happened to be, potentially profitable to him.
Interesting. All right, let's move to Syria.
My partner, the award-winning precious metals company Gold Co. has a special offer. Right now, you'll learn about how gold and silver can help you protect your retirement savings. On
September in 2015, I think Prigozhin is looking for the opportunity to implement this completely new concept of the using military forces. And he want to demonstrate the ability, combat ability of the machine. And we were delivered to Syria. Scheduled civilian flight of civilian military Russia. Look at us with a surprise. They didn't know who we are and what we to do here, and how they must to treat us. And after we received the weapons, we take a part in several military action and demonstrated the whole superiority on the superiority over enemy, and of course the whole superiority over the Bashar Assad army. But I think at that moment Russian military and Syrian military thought that they
Have you filled out the paperwork?
Russian military thought that if they provided Syrian army with airstrike support, in this war. But it turned out that Syrian army degraded to the point of inability to wage offensive action.
And so, like as Murat is saying, when Russia first intervenes in Syria, one of the reasons that they're doing it, actually, it's after the annexation of Crimea, and they recognize the importance of Syria at that time for the U.S. and for the West, because this is, if you remember 2015, this is when ISIS is really at its height with the territorial caliphate, and the U.S. has already intervened, gone back in to fight ISIS. And so the Russians think that if we go in back into Assad, we kind of force the U.S. into a joint counterterrorism operation against ISIS that will force them to kind of and so they come in and they're backing Assad, but as Murat's saying, Assad's government, I mean, the forces that he has are incredibly unmotivated. I mean, for obvious reasons, given his rule, and the rebels, not just ISIS, but all the other rebels fighting against them. And the Russians initially wanted it to just be an air campaign. But, I mean, as you find out pretty quick, like, air campaigns alone rarely work for anybody. And it was clear that with Assad's forces on the ground was not going to work. They were not going to take the territory back from rebels. And so, but they face some difficulties, which I think you would speak to as well, where this is kind of a faraway intervention for Russia, and they haven't figured out if they want to have actual Russian the Russian public will think, if Russian soldiers are going home.
Follow the flutter wings!
That they're going to be against this and say, why are we here in Syria? And so one of the reasons that Murat and Wagner were able to get back in is that the Russian military didn't have to report casualties for Wagner.
And using the mercenaries in this war to take could resolve the very very difficult task. The thing is that Russian generals the concept of the war with a little bloodshed. And
I don't have enough mana.
They can create some kind of appearances that this concept is working. lost of their sceneries. Didn't it include in the official?
Okay, that makes sense. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the whole point of to include Valkyries was to build some type of an alliance with the United States.
Yeah, it was an
against
effort.
ISIS.
It was an effort because, in part, there's always a lot of reasons why things happen, but
go forth on swift wings.
Intervention, because if you remember, Syria started going into civil war right around the time of the Arab Spring.
All are nourished when the cycle renews.
The Russians didn't have any particular love for the fact that there was a Russian base in Syria and
what pretty petals!
Let's give you some extra time.
The timing of why they went in was to basically get themselves onto the world stage again.
You have best.
Was existentially of ISIS. Of course, also when they show up and they're on the ground, Assad also has different ideas for what he wants the Russians to do, and ISIS is less of a concern to him than a lot.
In a surprising turn of events, Serbia seems to be modifying its MiG-29 fighter jets to fire Soviet-designed Kh-31 anti-radar missiles, according to footage shared by aviation watchers in early February 2025. The videos, reportedly recorded at Patajnica Air Base near Belgrade, display MiG-29s outfitted with Kh-31 missiles, a configuration never before acknowledged by Serbian officials. To date, no official statement has confirmed this upgrade, and Serbian media remains silent on the matter. Historically, neither Serbia nor the former Yugoslavia operated Kh KH-31 missiles or aircraft capable of employing them. The MiG-29 models Serbia has flown, specifically the 9-12 and 9-13 variants, were originally not designed to launch advanced air-to-surface weapons such as the KH-31. Initially, KH-31P missiles were launched by Soviet aircraft like the Su-17M, Su-24, and MiG-27. Over time, they were also integrated into more modern platforms like the Su-30, Su-34, and Su-35. Similarly, carrier-based aircraft such as the MiG-29K and Su-27K could be armed with the anti-ship KH-31A and anti-radar KH-31P variants. However, the baseline MiG-29 fighters of the 9-12 and 9-13 series lacked any capability to use guided missiles against.
There's a few foods that people already know about that increase GLP-1 activity within the body, meaning it has an Ozempic-like effect. Just hit them flat out and then we'll get into the details because there's a lot more than just what I'll talk about here on the surface. Allulose, really important one, right? One of the most potent stimulators of GLP-1 that exists. That is a sweetener that comes from dates and figs, so you can get it in a concentrated form, you can eat some dates and figs, but it's pretty small amounts there. Obviously, protein is big, particularly from eggs. Fiber is going to be a big one, particularly soluble fiber. So things like glucomannan fiber, like shiitake noodles, chia seeds, flax seeds, things that have a high soluble fiber content are going to have a stronger potential for a GLP-1 effect.